You know, when I was a kid, I used to grandpa my brain, but it's so dangerous. Do you think it is?
Started reporting, I'm sure it's great.
Change my group.
I think it's just good.
Don't call that.
Oh, because I'm like,
I live in Southwest Portland, and the way traffic is flowing, and I still have people, you know, look, and I'm like, I wave, and I'm like, I almost got hit.
Good morning, everybody. Looks like quite a few people have showed up already. And we're at around 10:01, so we will get things rolling. For anybody that doesn't know, I'm Ron Vaught. I'm the city controller. And Bill here is going to run the show. It's kind of amazing that we're back to talking about the end of the year again, but it's coming up really quickly and we need to start our planning processes. We've already done, I've already signed off on a few audit schedules myself. We're doing a kickoff meeting with Moss Adams next week, I think Wednesday or Thursday. So we'll start the conversation with them and start getting a clearer idea of what they're going to want this year. So that will be interesting. As far as I know, we're not changing the IT audit yet. We are in the early stages of replacing the procurement package with Ariba, but that won't affect this fiscal year. And we'll be upgrading SAP to that S4, but that is also next year at least, so that won't impact it this current fiscal year. So the IT aspects next year could be more challenging, but I think the audit will be pretty similar to what it has been. So anyway, that's my kickoff. Summer is going to start talk to us about accounting changes. So are you available?
I'm virtually available.
All righty.
All right, accounting changes. As we know, we have a lot of other changes. I'm just going to focus on our technical accounting changes. Jumping right into it, I'm sure we've covered this in a couple different spaces, but I wanted to make sure that maybe some of you that are doing the accounting at least have a high level understanding. We've covered this with the AAC, and I've kind of been covering this in some of my capital asset and project systems trainings a little bit. If you have questions, do let me know after we go through any of this. But GASB 96. Love these GASBs. They definitely hit us with a few right of use GASBs back to back here. This is our we'll say our last major impacting one that we have, knock on wood, at least for a while. GASB came up with this great phrase we like, subscription-based information technology arrangements. The key, I think, is understanding, these are our cloud-based softwares, and that we now kind of have some clearer guidance on when we should and should not be capitalizing them. For those of you that have been around a while, you know that we've been capitalizing implementation phase costs related to some of our major cloud-based softwares in the past. So anyway, this kind of gives us that clear guidance on when we would, and then more clearly when we would not capitalize those implementation phase costs. The key being we wouldn't be capitalizing if they aren't meeting these conditions of GASB 96 to be a SPIDA or a SBIDA when we're happy at them. Bill, next slide if you would. All right, so what do we do? Just a little background. We've been working on this for, I don't know, before I got here, a couple of years is when they really got started. Over the last year since I've been here, we really dove in deep, tried to avoid hitting bureaus too much, did everything we could to do that. So we know that we really hit you hard with the least GASB 87. So we did our best to try to do as much of the work as we possibly could. So we started with a list BTS had put together and bureaus had added to. Then I did some deep diving, running contracts by contract type, doing cost reviews of GL accounts that we commonly will charge costs in, going through our capital assets, pulling all the software and having bureaus tell me which software assets are really related to these cloud systems or Sabitas. And then we jumped into having financial reporting really dig into the hard work, is what I would say, of getting the payment terms out of the contracts, really running current listings of what the payments are, and jumping in deep to if these had any exceptions or contracts, that would really qualify, and really narrowing it down to those contracts that qualified under this GASB. From there, we've kind of asked audit leads to validate, are the assets and service related to this contract, because we don't really do the recording of the liability and related asset until you have your software and service. So for instance, right now, Water and BES are working on a cloud-based work order system that they're capitalizing some of the implementation phase costs in a project. We're not going to record the liability and the offset of the capital asset for that until that work order system is actually available for use in operations, or in service, as we like to call it. So that's how we kind of got to our list of contracts. Next slide, please, Bill. Going forward, this is kind of just a highlight. You'll be as a capital asset accountant, people will come to you and say, we're implementing a project, and you'll need to work with us in financial reporting / me and Brick, our capital asset accountant, to really make sure, is this a contract that's going to qualify as a SPITA once you get this implemented? And that will help inform you on if you're capitalizing those implementation phase costs or you're collecting them in a project as work in progress. And then we'll really be coordinating together to get those costs that you've collected on the same asset record that Brick and I are going to be recording, that the portion of the what I'm starting to call the liability offset portion of the capital asset. And I say that because the guidance tells us basically that we are kind of coming up with a value of a liability, and then when we record that liability on a full accrual level, we're going to be offsetting it with the capital asset value. I'm not going to go into those deep, gory details here. We do have a policy coming out, and if you want those deep, gory details on how we're doing that assessment, I'm happy to share. I'm assuming a lot of you don't, but if you do, let me know. Happy to share. And then we have an audit schedule where we're kind of be doing things when we have you confirm. Big shout out to the whole team in financial reporting who have worked on this. Kevin, Jared did a ton of work. Lorenzo, Taylor, before she left us for revenue, she's following her passion to do taxes. Nobody knows why anyone wants to do taxes, but I'm glad it exists. and Kevin's really been leading the show from the real project management standpoint. So that's been a really great team effort between us. And now me and Brick get to have the fun of capital assets. And thanks to the EBS team, we had to do some testing and some small changes to the asset class to really figure out a good way to make this happen in the system. So thanks to Melina and Diamond, who have been helping get those changes in place very quickly. All right, GASB 94. We're not hitting you a lot with GASB 94, mainly because we don't believe there's a ton of impact to the city. We've done most of our outreach through spectator facilities. because they would be likely the most impacted. But anyway, to start, this is what GASB 94 is covering. We had some previous guidance in GASB about service concession arrangements that I don't know if anyone is familiar with, because again, we don't do it a ton here, but anyway, this gives us some kind of clearer guidance on when we have folks operating our assets. We've done this. Could you go to the next slide, Bill? Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. We've done a little bit of this really population review by working with spectator facilities to understand their contracts and if they had any that would qualify. We've done some outreach to the AAC to try to kind of help folks understand, but again, not really wanting to hammer bureaus again really too hard. We've just been trying to focus on where we believe there's really material likelihood. I will say Ron and Kevin and I got together with our knowledge of the city to try to really rack our brains about, is there any weird ones we're not thinking of? So you might have some small follow-up from me on some of those that we've tried to think of, maybe these would apply. But at any rate, if you have significant situations where you have folks operating our assets on your behalf, or we are operating another jurisdiction's assets on their behalf, and it really seems like there's these kind of fixed payments related to them, those are situations where it would be great if you could bring those to my attention, and we can take a look at whether they would qualify under this GASB. But like I said, so far we've done a lot of looking and haven't found any that we really believe would apply. All right, next slide, Bill. Just to summarize it for folks in case you hadn't put it together, GASB just hit us with 3 right of use GASBs right in a row. We got the leases out with CLM a couple years ago. That was GASB 87. We just went over this GASB 94, which is that public-private, public-public partnerships. They use this PPP asset a lot, which kind of makes me laugh. And then we have SPIDAs with GASB 96. So just trying to help folks recognize this is GASB's way of telling us the right to use is enough to call it an asset, where in the past it wasn't super clear whether that was the case or not. So this was our kind of heads up that they really do believe that right of use is a situation we should be considering on our financial statements going forward. All right, Bill. Bam, it's like you knew what I was going with. Group assets, again, this is another one where they didn't give me a real name of this guidance, so I'm starting to call it group assets. It was really just a change of related to an implementation question. So if you're familiar with GASB, typically they'll issue standards for really significant changes in guidance. This was not a standard. This was just a question within an implementation guide that usually is just to add clarification. So it didn't give us a ton of information about how they wanted us to implement this change. Luckily, we had Moss Adams early on prepare some thoughts that we've used, and I was using even at Metro about how to go about assessing this. The key idea here is that you've got next slide, Bill, is that you've got assets that are under our capitalization threshold individually, but as a group, maybe they're really material, and we should be recording them. So to sort of start this on whether, and ask the question, do we need to go back and capitalize costs that in previous years we maybe expensed? I've put out a schedule to bureaus asking them to tell me, do you have any groups of assets over $1 million that are individually under the $5,000, I use the equipment threshold, thinking that would be the most likely place we would have things like this. And so far we haven't got a lot of yeses. I'm still waiting on BTS, which I think will likely be where we get more yeses. And from there, basically, we'll decide if we need to do a prior year capitalization, a kind of a adjustment to our capital assets. Luckily, with this one, the guidance isn't in effect until 7/1 of 22. So we really just need to have this all wrapped up by, or sorry, 7/1 of 23. I had my year background backwards. We just really need to have this wrapped up for next year. But so far, nothing too significant to report, nothing we're going to have to record. It will mean when you go to do purchases of groups of assets going forward, that you'll have to do more of a thoughtful assessment on whether you need to capitalize this or not. And I'll just acknowledge one of the real challenges on capitalizing groups of assets is how to thoughtfully retire and then add acquisitions to them. So if you find yourself potentially needing to capitalize a group asset and you've never had to do that before, definitely reach out to the capital asset inbox, and that'll be Brick and I trying to help you come up with an idea on how you handle that. I know working at the Water Bureau, we had a method on how we handled water meters, for instance, that are typically valued at under $5,000 individually, but we treated them as a network of assets. So that definitely took a lot of effort to find a way to track the new meters coming in and thoughtfully retire the old meters going out. It won't always make sense to do that level of tracking each year, so we'll try to find a way where maybe you're not having to do that level if it's not too material, and we can avoid having to do too much work that's not helpful in another way. Sometimes us having to do the inventory tracking is just helpful from a good tracking of public assets kind of perspective, but I don't really want to add that work if we don't have to at this point. I think we are all a little bit stressed by the number of projects we have going. I went through that real quickly, but I want to give anyone an opportunity to ask any questions you have about these new GASBs. But I also know sometimes in these meetings it can be a little bit intimidating, so truly don't hesitate if you have questions. Reach out now. You probably have other folks with the same question. And if you just don't feel comfortable, I'm happy to answer them whenever you need.
Cool. We can't see if anybody's hands are raised, so hopefully.
I don't see
Some are
any
okay.
in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on it.
We'll do it.
So, anybody here? Next slide. So Kevin is going to talk to us about the calendar and settlement dates and that sort of stuff, which probably more people are interested in.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So first thing to cover, we have our year-end resources page starting to get uploaded with the year-end reporting. This has stuff like the cover sheet is there. There's a accounts payable accruals kind of instructions, how to do those. There's math recovery and accrual instructions, year-end GRIR cleanup is available there, and then when they're ready, stuff like the GRI report, outstanding PO listing report will all get uploaded to that. So it's a good website to add to your favorites. Next slide. So the items in blue are for procurement, which will be covered by the next presenter. So I'm not going to cover those. But starting in April, the year-end kickoff meeting is now. So we're starting the process. The business cycles out of schedule 25 will be due next Wednesday, April 26th. Next slide. Then in May 5th, that Friday, the schedule 123 for the city as a leasee, those are due that May 5th. And we split the deadlines this year with the 122 is due schedule on May 17th, partially because we also had to add a similar splitter audit schedule, which will be the same. We'll pre-populate that data and send it to you for confirmation. So it's a little more work, so we gave a little more time to do that work. And then schedule 23I capital asset inventory will be due Friday, May 12th. Next slide. In June, then things start to get a little busier. On June 1st, the monitoring of GRIR account will begin, and any AR write-off requests are due June 2nd. Advanced recoveries are due June 9th. And then June 12th, the grant billings are scheduled to be completed. Coming forward to the last week of June, June 28th will be the last day for bureaus to approve leases in the CLM workflow, and the lease evaluator is scheduled to have everything approved by noon. And then the last day of the year, June 30th, all cash receipts to customer accounts should be applied, and revenue will post all outstanding year invoices by 4 p.m. And then the last day for GRIR adjustments is due that day. Advanced clearings should be completed, and operational accounting will roll over the purchase orders. And then SAP will be locked at 4 p.m. On July 1st, the PO listing report will be available on the county websites. That's that website we posted the link to. This will be your source for your AP accruals. July 7th, the adjustment to the allowance for uncollectibles should be made. And then, so all the accruals are due now July 9th. I originally had this as the 7th, but gave you a couple extra days to that Sunday. And the audit schedule is 146 and 148 for AR and AP. Those schedules are due. On July 10th, that Monday, all the final bureau entries are due before noon. Last chance to make entries. That interagency billings and internal service billings.
Can we pause there just for a second, Kevin? Because I think that one's a little bit weird. Just that noon deadline. I want to just highlight that because I don't think we typically have that, but that final journal entry deadline being before noon. I think usually we give you the end of the day, but we were really trying to give you some extra time here. Call out to Remini and Bill for really working and acknowledging that we were kind of, initially we had this deadline on Friday and we were really trying to give you a little bit of extra time if possible, but that did mean we had to do a noon kind of midday deadline where we typically do an end of day deadline. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, so it's still more time for you, which is always nice. So. Okay, and then that same day, July 10th, we'll run the resource-related billing, execute trustee report. Cash transfers are due before noon, and then Summer's team will start the round 1 settlements on that day. The next 3 days, the capital assets, WVS elements, bureau grants, J post settlement cleanup will start. That takes about three days. And the ROU disposal program is run. Moving forward to the 13th, the resource-related billing accruals are due, and then round 2 settlements will start that day. July 14th is the day for the grants team to do their final accruals, and then round 3 will start that day. And then the Treasury interest allocation, which is all the interest the Treasury keeps in their own fund, gets distributed out to all the bureaus for the financial reporting. And then we'll close AP 12 and open AP 13, which is when my team starts the year-end financial statement preparation process. So just final thoughts here in audit schedules. All the audit leads should have received their audit schedules by now. If you have questions, email the inbox audit schedule. I'm maintaining that myself. We have a new submitted audit schedule, which I'm planning to send out this afternoon, which is similar to the lease audit schedule. So round 1, we'll do all the year-end adjustments for AR accruals, AP accruals, interagency billings, adjustments to the AFU, and pretty much everything is due in round 1, mostly. That's due by noon that day. Round 2 is for specific year-end adjustments like the capital assets, project and WS cleanup, and the grants post round 1 cleanup.
Just a quick note about round 2. If you do have anything that hits another bureau, you must include that bureau's approval on the JE.
Good point. And round 3, we'll close that Friday at 5, and this is for the grants team and resource-related billing accruals. So if you do want to request an exception to this process, like a late entry, those requests need to be submitted to the controller directly, and he'll determine if that adjustment is appropriate. If it does get approved, someone in that accounting division will make any entries on behalf of your bureau.
Kevin, just to be clear, that's kind of after period 12 closes, right?
Yeah, it's mostly for entries into the adjusting periods.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks.
It has to be pretty significant for an approval to get, an adjusting entry to get approved. So, if you have any questions, you can contact Bill Wagner at Inbox Estimate Maintenance. If you have questions on the auto schedules, there's the Inbox Auto Schedule tracker. Yeah, Inbox Auto Schedule inbox. Is there any questions before I go on? No, okay. Thanks, everyone.
There was a question in the chat asking about the PowerPoint slides, and Nancy will be posting those to the web after the meeting.
Okay, so now we'll talk about procurement. Is Jess online?
I am online, and I hope everybody can kind of forgive me for not being on camera. I'm kind of getting over an illness at the moment. So one of the first things I kind of wanted to point out is that we have posted the year-end memo on our website this year. It's kind of different from previous years where we just kind of sent it out via email. So it was sent out via email about 6 weeks ago, but it is online. And if you need access to it at all, you can get to it from there. So with that, next slide. So as usual, we've already had a couple of deadlines pass at this point. So if you had a formal bid package, which is basically anything over $150,000, that deadline was back on Friday, March 31st. We have a pretty important deadline coming up on next Friday for intermediate bid packages. So this is anything that's got to go to bid that is up to $150,000. That is due this or next Friday, and then pretty quickly followed by the low bid intermediate solicitation packages, which are for goods and services up to $50K. After that, things start shutting down pretty quickly. So the date that I would highlight, probably from a procurement perspective, is Friday, May 26th. That's the last day that anything that's not an emergency is going to be accepted for this fiscal year. One thing I do kind of want to make clear here is that this is around this fiscal year. This does not mean that you can't submit things for, an RFP or for an intermediate or anything like that. It just means that if you need it done this fiscal year, these are your deadlines. And these are the deadlines that we're going to be using to make sure that we can actually get this work done. The next deadline is going to be Wednesday, May 31st for BTS store staff. That lets them have enough time to be able to process goods or process orders and actually receive the goods. The last day for bureaus to close and cancel is Thursday, June 29th. And really, we tried to make as many things line up to June 29th as we could this year. So that's last day to do new DPRs. It's last day to basically do anything in SAP around creating a new procurement. And then the last day for goods receipts is Friday, June 30th. Next slide. For P-card, last date for P-card purchases, again, for this fiscal year is Friday, June 16th. You'll need to have everything from May 23rd to June 22nd signed off and closed by the group accountant Wednesday, June 28th to interface on the 29th, and then transactions from the 23rd to the 29th signed off and closed by Thursday, June 29th to interface on Friday, June 30th. Nothing really changed from previous years there. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. Again, I come back to what Summer said. I know that sometimes it can be really intimidating, but this is a good time to ask these questions. Contacts, if you have a question about services, please reach out to James Mooring, Jeff Blade for goods. If you have general questions about the year-end calendar, you can reach out to me. For design and construction, it's Rick Nostman, or I'm sorry, for design. For construction, it's Kelly Davis McCrannon. And for general, it's Kathleen Brandis Marua. And then anything with P-Card, it's Aaron Thompson. So again, I'll pause if y'all have any questions.
Jess, I do see one question in the chat. Are the bureaus going to be receiving a year-end open PO report? And I'm not sure if that question is around the report that often our accounting group kind of helps that we use for accounts payable accruals, or are you asking for kind of a different report, maybe ahead of that report that we issue?
Are they maybe asking about the one that comes from BTS, from the EBS team?
I think so.
It sure is. So yeah, we'll be issuing that report again, surely, just like we have in previous years, and we'll get that up on the website. I think it's actually my team that's typically done that.
Usually it's a partnership between you all, us, and BTS that will come out with that report. And my understanding is that we are going to be doing those this year. It may not be as prevalent as it has been years past. We tried a different process out last year, which actually really helped when it came to year-end processing. And my understanding is we're going to do that again this year. It probably won't be as prevalent as it has been in years past, but my understanding is we are still planning on sending those out. And then I saw Mark Ariza, who's on my staff, who is getting most of these requests, had a nice ask in here, and I will also repeat his ask. That if it is something that is year-end sensitive, it really helps if you put a note when you're making the request in BySpeed. That way we know to prioritize it. We kind of assume that things that come in, particularly just prior to the deadline date, are fiscal year insensitive. But if something isn't sensitive, it actually kind of helps for us to know that, so that we can prioritize those things that are. The other thing that I would put out there is that if it is not year insensitive, you might see some delays on it being assigned. It's mainly just because we have received a pretty significant increase in volume over the last couple of weeks, which is not unusual. So if you have turned in something that's not year insensitive, please just be patient while we're working through everything we've got that we need to get done this fiscal year.
Phil had a comment.
Yes, Phil, that is correct. But it definitely helps if they are closed on the bureau side first.
Okay, so us in the room can't see his comment.
His comment was around open purchase requisitions and that they all get closed at year end. And I'll just take that opportunity to say thank you, Vicki, for your work and helping to make that automated closing process so much less work for procurement. And just sorry.
Yes, very much so. Vicki has been wonderful with this.
Alrighty. So, accounts receivable. Ben, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh.
Okay, as you can see by this slide that we need to have the write-offs in by June 2nd, Friday, June 2nd. The sooner the better. It leaves less work for our staff to do. June 30th, everything is cut off by 4 o'clock. We prefer to have you to have all your information, your bills and your invoices to us by 2 o'clock. That gives us time to post anything and correct anything that needs to be corrected before they actually shut down SAP for the day. And then July 10th is the other next big day where everything else has to be done. All your accruals have to be recorded, sent to us so that we can make sure they're correct. And as you've noticed, they changed the date. The time is by noon on the 10th. So the sooner, I mean, the sooner you get them in, the better it is sometimes. So that if they have to be fixed, we can fix them or change something. Then it allows other departments like Bill's team to finish up what he needs to do with them once they go through AR. That's pretty much for AR. Anything that you want to turn in or early is better from now on. I've sent out a report last month for you invoices and stuff that are over a year old. Those would be nice if we could get those cleaned up by year end, but they're not required. So if you have questions, you can call me. If I'm not around, then Peter Shear is available still, and our supervisor, David Lyons, can probably help. I don't have their contact information on hand, so.
Do you have an inbox that everybody can see, or? Like we have shared inboxes for accounts payable and. Okay. I can contact Dan. So next up, Rick is going to talk to us about capital assets.
Oh, so this year, as always, we do real property true up for all funds. Unfortunately, we were the accounting division was notified by property managers that the city's property database no longer has integrity because it hasn't been updated in a while. So we're adding another reconciliation from the property database to county records to ensure the completeness of our SAP land acquisitions. You'll be updating the inventory tab, making sure the additions and retirements properly are recorded in SAP. And then also ensure the Bureau owning a property has been, after it's been recorded in SAP, need to double check and make sure it's in the city properties database. And you have to contact the current GIS person, which is Mitch. I do not have an email for him, but anyone that any of the audit schedules I sent out, his contact information is in there. Next slide, please. So this year, the full inventory list we're doing is for the fiduciary and proprietary funds. So I've had a few questions already about doing full inventory for governmental funds. No, you're only doing land true up for those funds. And so in that inventory tab, we show the grants are indicated by blue. And so we're asking you to, when you're checking on the grant assets, to let us know the condition. And then on the next page gives you kind of like an example of like what good, okay, and poor standing is. And so as Kevin pointed out before, the audit schedules are due May 12th. So the email should be, you need to have it signed. The cover sheet should be sent to both inboxes, the capital asset and like the audit schedules. The schedules were sent out in March. So if you need another copy or you don't see it, just email the capital asset inbox. So if you have any other questions, but Summer and I have been good about following up with people. So you can also just inbox the SAP capital asset inbox with questions.
One thing I'll just add is that grant condition assessment is a requirement of the federal guidance under 2 CFR 200, which is why we're having you do it, just to ensure that we're complying with those federal grant requirements.
Okey-doke. So next up is Michael.
Hello, I'm talking about accounts payable related due dates. Key date in April. So advanced recovery report and GRIR report will be available on our website by tomorrow. This year we will add contract number and contract ending date in the report so that you can identify the items that needs to be pay attention. So yeah, please start checking the reports as soon as possible.
Michael, I hate to do this, but I just want to add one comment there. What we saw last year was we saw advances still outstanding related to contracts that were closed, and that does not go well together for me. So if you have contracts that are closed, you should not have outstanding advances related to those contracts. If you're not sure what to do, then reach out to us. If you're having problems getting the documentation you need related to the advance, whatever the scenario is, do let us know. If your contract has been closed for more than, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it's 90 days. You won't be able to do the goods receipts or invoices receipts. Is it 90 or 60 days? I can't remember. And you won't even be able to do the recovery. So just know if you're in that scenario, you're going to have to reach out to us. But also know you need to get those ones done 60 days from goods receipt. Thank you, Phil. So you only have 60 days from that contract end date to really be able to do that a goods receipt still against the contract. So if the end date is more than 60 days in the past, we'll have to work with a lot of folks to extend the contract for you to be able to do the entries you need to do. But at any rate, really appreciate any effort. And if you need our support, let us know. And thank you, Michael, for doing the work to add those fields to the report. We're hoping it'll be really helpful in your review.
Thank you. So June due date, please email the request to AP Council inbox by Friday for the Friday, the June 9th for the advanced recovery request. If you cannot get the invoice for the services and goods delivered by the end of June 30th, please enter a journal entry for advanced recovery accrual. Also, goods receipts, AP invoices, GRIR clearing accounts adjustment due date is June 30th, 4 p.m. Next slide, please. Key date in July. Please create year-end journal entry for AP accrual and advanced recovery accrual by Friday, the July 7th. And also submit audit schedule 148 to audit schedule inbox. And both AP accrual and advanced recovery accruals are done with schedule 148. Next slide, please. So, do you have any questions?
Anna pointed out a question in the chat. Aren't these actually due at noon on Monday? Yes. Sorry, Michael, we were evil, and I do believe this is the date we changed to Monday at noon after we had told you it was the end of day Friday. So good point, Anna. Thank you. Do I have that right, Bill? Keep me honest. Thank you.
That's right.
Okay. Sorry about that, Micah. We changed that after you got your slides ready. And then someone else did have a question in the chat asking if the contract crosses into next fiscal year, or I'll say even future fiscal years after next, it's okay if the advance is still outstanding, correct? And the answer is yes, it's okay if the contract is still going. But my point was, if your contract has ended, then you should have all the advances recovered. And so if you're in a situation where you think you can't, then let us know. But yes, if it's still continuing, you wouldn't need to worry about it as much. And then we have Michael Kirsting. It does pose special issues in budgeting and some oddities in budget to actuals reports, but as long as you're aware of them, you should be okay. I love that you highlighted this, Michael, just so folks are aware. This can be confusing if you haven't dealt with the budgetary impact related to advances in the past. You can get a little bit confused between our YDRIP reports and SAP, your BFM reports that you're running in the budget software, and then what we're actually going to report in the ACFR, and is going to be, important in that. That's where really budget law applicability is going to be. I can't talk today. So at any rate, if you're concerned about your budget and how it works with advances, ask Michael. No, just kidding. You can ask Michael and us. But thank you for highlighting that, Michael.
Thank you.
Okey-doke. We've been continuing to schedule this for 90 minutes. And I think what it was back in the old Portland building, there was an auditorium and we all would meet in one big room and presenters would have to move on and off stage, and it took that extra time. So we should probably cut it back to 60 minutes for next year. Well, I think we attached the packet to the meeting.
Yes.
And then Nancy will be adding files to the year-end webpage.
Hey, Ron, is it going to be the new internal webpage?
No,
Or
the
old?
one that you created.
What?
You created one.
Okay.
And he put like year-end calendar, but then he didn't have a link because we didn't have the file yet. So we will get you all the files and you can create the links and get those set up. Anybody got questions or issues or? Well, feel free to contact us if you do, and I appreciate your time.
There was one question, comment. I'm not sure if I can read it all. Vicky is adding some clarification. Basically, she's kind of clarifying how very specifically when you can do a goods receipt related to a contract that's closed. So I'll just point that out to folks that there's nuances around that 60 days and how you actually address that she's put in the chat. But if you're having that scenario, don't hesitate to reach out to Maiko and even me if you need to, and we can help you with how that gets applied if you're in that closed contract scenario. And maybe just to help with getting the link to you to make sure you know where our year-end packet is. Bill, would you be up to maybe responding to the meeting once Nancy gets it uploaded and just reply with the link on the website where everyone can get the packet? Awesome.
Sure, yes, yeah, I will.
Okay. Thanks.
Alrighty, well, have a good one. So do you want to swap these?
Yeah.
I was just finishing your
And then the packet, I've got a link to that page.
I think you finished with forms and
Minimize this.
So yeah, just putting those archive, and I'll move them all over.
I'll go back to team.
I just wanted so that we could.
I really like the way you're doing this.
Okay.
Keeping it inside that folder, because that way we know where it came from
Yeah.
rather than what I did. So I'm leaving it as is.
Oh, okay.
And then when we go to the meeting, we can just tell everybody, hey, this is for this folder that we have, this is
Okay.
ones we thought.
Leave it then.
I'm gonna consider those two complete.
Okay, awesome.